They say endurance sports is a suffer fest. Who can suffer the longest will win at the end. Well, whether you believe that or not, suffering is definitely an important part of athletics. And how do you get better at doing that? Well, that's when I bring in elite athletes to tell you that. Here's Faye's story. Cool. Okay, so next question from the audience is, how do you get better at suffering? You're known as like the grinder. So how do you get into like that mindset to just go out there and suffer fest?
I think like you got to practice it in like training. I think that's the number one thing is like, yeah, you got to practice like doing some hard workouts and like pushing through them just so that when it happens in a race, you're like, you're not shocked. Your system isn't like, what is this discomfort? You're like, oh yeah, I was here 10 days ago when I was doing 5 by a mile and like completely blew up at mile 3 and just sucked it up and hung on for the last 2 repeats. Like at some point, I was actually just talking to my girlfriend like about this morning when we were running. She was telling me a story about like, she's like a good runner, like 250 marathoner. And she was saying like, telling me about like last year, she was trying to go to the, get the Olympic trials qualifier. So anyway, she was telling me that this one race, that she was trying to get it, she like completely blew up and she didn't think she was going to be able to finish the race, but she like pushed through. She was completely miserable, like on the verge of dropping out, like puking, like just everything was a mess. Right. And she says after that point, she's just got like a lot stronger, like everything, she became like tougher. And I think that that's almost like what you have to do. I think a lot of people haven't actually hit like their critical pain tolerance because they've never pushed themselves that hard. But the people that have gone out and like completely shit the bed in a race or gone out too hard and like really mentally struggled to get through that finish line, like after that experience, you kind of realize like, okay, that's the worst. That's the worst that you can. If that's the worst thing that's going to happen in a race and you were to be able to like suffer through it and endure it, like you shouldn't be so afraid of the discomfort. Like people are so afraid of the pain. And I get nervous for races, like not really because of placement, because like I'm just like, oh, I don't want to feel this uncomfortable. Like I get nervous for the pain and that's like, I'm used to it. So I think that people just in some sense need to just go out there one day, hammer the crap out of a run, be uncomfortable, push through it, and then work back from there. Realize like it's not so bad. You'll be okay. And it's totally trainable.
Totally. Yeah.
So work on it. Like that's, I work on it in my tempo runs. I hate tempo runs, but I'm always like, oh, this is what, this is kind of mental toughness training.
I love tempo runs, but I hate like tempo runs broken up by obstacles. So
like a race.
Yeah, like a race. I have especially like pull-ups. So like I have this half-mile loop that I'll do by my house. It'll be a half mile, come back, do 10 pull-ups, and then go right back out. And like running after doing 10 pull-ups is miserable because your arms are like, they don't work, especially if you do this like 10 or 12 times, and you're just like,
yuck.
Cool. And then if you're listening, you want more information on like suffering, I actually interviewed Hans, Olympic rower, back in episode 12. You can go check that out. We talked about entering the pain cave is what he called it.
Yeah. It's one thing I will say about that is like, you have to, and I was pacing my girlfriend through a tempo run on last Monday, and I was just like, she was like starting to suffer, and I was just like, you got to just zone out. Like you, at some point, like you got to like disconnect like your body and like what you're actually doing. Like so many times, like why people stop running, it's like a protective mechanism. Like it's like, oh yeah, of course your body wants to stop running. Like you're literally producing like lactic acid, like your heart rate is higher than it probably should be. Like your body is like, let's stop, let's slow down. So if you can like just shut your, like I literally told her, I was like, turn off your brain, zone out. If you can just go somewhere where you're like almost like a little bit unconscious and just get it done, one foot in front of the other. That's so much better than analyzing. Like, and people, I think, have a mistake because they love watching their watch and all the stats, and they're just like geek out and analyze. Like, you don't want to know what your body's doing. It's not good. So just don't look at that watch and just like go for it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I had this conversation with someone I mentor in the mile, like for the mile race. Like, there's so many, like, you can go out slow, you can go out fast, and it just kind of depends on, you know, what crowd you're running in. But at the end of the day, I told him, like, you're not racing the clock, you're racing people. You know, so like, why pay attention to your first 400 split, your first 800 split? Right. You know, because everybody else went through the same thing. As long as you're with the crowd, like, the only thing you're going to do by listening to that is freak yourself out because you ran too fast, or freak yourself out because you ran too slow.
Right. And that's so true. And like, people who are highly competitive, I think, just have naturally a higher pain tolerance because they're like so unwilling. Like, even if they're not fit enough, I gotta call Hunter out on this. Like, I don't think Hunter's ever been like fit enough to like compete against like Ryan Atkins and Robert Killian, just from pure running standpoint.
Yeah.
But I think that guy can put himself in more pain, discomfort than them. And I think it's just because like he can't lose. Like, he has so competitive that like he doesn't care if he's like in shape to run like, you know, maybe he's just in shape to run like a 34-minute 10K. He'll run a 32-minute 10K that day because if that's what's required of him to win, he has to win because he's that crazy and competitive, and then he'll just do it. And sometimes I feel like I can pull something out of my ass that's like nowhere near the fitness level that I am, just because I'm kind of reckless. I'm like, I'll just like go out with the leaders.
Yeah, totally.
Sometimes, you know, that doesn't serve me well, but I'm like, whatever. Is there really any other way to race? It's like, you're here to go for it. Like, I'd rather do that and blow up than like have one of those races, which like a lot of I work with my athletes a lot of time to not have these races where you see like people like the last half mile, they're like sprinting in. It's like their fastest. It was like their half mile, and then they like finish and they're like, I think I could have went a little harder. I was like, I've never said that in my life.
The only time that happens for me is if I'm winning. Like, if the last half mile is because I'm out sprinting somebody else for the win and I just sat on them the whole time.
Yeah.
But we could talk about suffering all day.
I know.
But well, there you have it. If you'd like to hear the rest of the interview with Faye Stenning, you can go to Science of Sports Recovery on whatever podcast app that you have. The full audio version is there. Otherwise, you can subscribe and ring the bell here on YouTube, and we're coming out with more great content every week with top-level athletes and researchers for you